Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our March Professor Circle series. We are extremely happy to provide this series every semester where we are presenting information and obviously highlighting members of the UNLV community on things that are of importance. We have had several different themes over the course of the year, including minority serving institution information, as well as even promotion and tenure information for faculty. One of the things that we have been talking about, at least for the last year, coming up on the last year, is the Common Read. And we thought that it would be a really good idea to highlight information about the Common Read and obviously demystifying it. So today I am extremely happy to be joined by Dr. Karen Violanti, who is the Executive Director of First Year Success Programs here at UNLV, who will be joined by a panel of esteemed colleagues. And as I said, I'm just extremely happy to welcome you this morning for this particular March session of the Professor Circle. So welcome, Karen, and I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much to everybody who is here today and to the intersection for hosting us and inviting us to be with you all today. So I'm excited to start this conversation and continue this conversation about the Common Read. Just to give you a little bit of sense of what we hope to cover today, we're going to just quickly review our agenda for our time together. In a moment, I'm going to ask my colleagues to introduce themselves, but I just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview again of what we hope to accomplish in our time together. And then, of course, after today, the conversation absolutely will continue, and we're excited to have those opportunities to continue those conversations after our workshop today. So our hope today is to talk a little bit just in terms of some context for the Common Read, just a little bit about first year experience as a whole, and what that looks like on a national level, what that looks like, and then what it looks like here at UNLV in the time that it's been in existence in the last year. We're going to talk a little bit about high impact practice as it relates to FYE. The Common Read being one of those HIPs, which will be our focus for today. Talk a little bit more specifically about what the Common Read has looked like in its inaugural year of the past year, and then give you a little bit of preview of what's coming in the next year and kind of where some of those conversations are going, and then take some questions at the end and wrap up before our next discussion. So I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleagues right now to introduce themselves, and then we'll move the conversation forward. So thank you again for hosting us today.
Well, I'll start. So my name is Professor Detken. I am the first year coordinator as well as the business communication coordinator within Lee Business School. So that's who I am.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Heath. I'm the Director of Student and Community Engagement for the College of Liberal Arts, and I help supervise our first year seminar as well as teach it.
Hi, all. I'm Emily Shreve. I'm Associate Director of Academic Transitions in the Academic Success Center, and I also coordinate our first year seminar and teach within it.
Well, thank you, Karen and Harriet, for having us here today. We're really excited to be a part of this just conversation. It's really exciting. And really what the three of us are really hoping to do today is really share with you about this high impact practice that Karen sort of talked about, this thing called Common Read that's used throughout really many first year experience programs across the nation. In fact, we're going to hopefully share with you a little bit today on how we have used it and how we hope to use it in the future at UNLV to continue to create connections and community for our students. But before we jump into that, I actually want to kind of step back and set the stage on why this whole topic really is so vitally important for everyone who interacts with any first-year students on campus or a program they may encounter. And I want to do that by sharing with you a kind of a silly but interesting fact I read recently. So I was reading the survey recently, kind of a silly survey, but it was asking people to rate what they thought was one of the best inventions over the past several decades. And there were several things on this list. Things like MP3 players were on the list, electric cars were on the list, things that have been invented over the last several decades. But do you know what was ranked as probably one of the most, the best inventions over the last several decades? It was GPS. Right? You know, that little blue dot that we follow on our phones that helps us, get from one place to another and, navigate life better. And so I read this article and I wanted to know why it came up as one of the top inventions. And here's what survey respondents said. They said they ranked it one of the top ones because, and this is probably something you can relate with, no one likes feeling lost, right? And plus, if you're old like me and you remember back before GPS when we had maps, how horrible those things were, right? Trying to drive with this big thing in your car and not be able to see over it because I'm short. I mean, see, and here's what's great is that GPS revolutionized our ability to find our way from one point to another and to really navigate life successfully. And really, when we think about it, this is the power that first-year experience programs play on a university campus. First-year programs really give students a map, right? A guide, a resource of sorts that allows students to navigate through the unknowns of college life, to, pivot and shift around the roadblocks that may come up, to deal with the potholes of finances and failure. Why? So they can really find their way to that destination that they see in front of them successfully. In fact, researchers have really confirmed the importance of FYE programs in higher ed institutions and have really come to determine that the first year for a student in college is critical to their overall long-term success. However, they've also determined that the first year of college can also thrust inexperienced and, underprepared students into an environment that authors Wren and Reason call personally and psychologically disruptive. Because students have to end up adapting to a whole new way of life, a whole new social structure, a whole new way of life and learning. And so this first year experience program was designed to really aid students as they step into the unknown, as they step into so many firsts for the first time, as they step into new academic arenas and new relationships, new patterns of thinking and learning, and then ultimately, career development. And so that's why it's important. So really, what is a first year experience? Well, when you look at all the research, and there's some things on your screen, but when you look at all the research and really the history, here's what one comes to realize. And that is that a first year experience is not a single program or initiative. It's not just one thing. It's not a silver bullet, but rather really an intentional combination of, lots of programs and people and resources, of really combination of both academic as well as co-curricular activities that really are woven together across institutions nationally. And really, although the more formalized or the kind of the key movement, FYE movement, only started in the 1970s with Dr. John Gardner, really, when you study higher ed history, there's really been a long history of really needing to support students in this collegiate environment. And personally, I think this is important for us to kind of remember, because I think it proves the need to support students as they transition into college life isn't just a new fad, right? Isn't just a new thing born out of pandemics or global crises. But, if you look back again, whether it was the first colonial college students to the first women at women's colleges to, the veterans coming back from World War II, students have always needed a map, right? A resource, a guide to sort of help navigate them through this thing that we call college life and really help them end up to where they want to go successfully. And so nationally, it's been in existence since 1970, but at UNLV, really, it's been here for the last, Karen's been here for the last year. It's been here for the last 10 years or so in some form and fashion, but nationally and at UNLV, first year experience is really an umbrella of sorts that encompasses many people, programs, and resources that you can see on your screen. Everything from admissions to orientations to bridge programs to first year seminars to living and learning communities, and then specifically this tool that we're going to be diving in deeply into today, this tool called the Common Read. And together, again, when woven together, they've been really proven to show positive correlations between really student engagement in a first year experience and really student success. In fact, literature shows us that first year experience programs increase motivation. They develop a student's sense of belonging. They can lead to higher GPAs and higher graduation rates, and also increase self-efficacy, which can lead to retention and persistence. And so this is what we're hoping to gain at UNLV through our first year experience, and specifically through the use of one such tool called the Common Read. And so now that we've looked at kind of what FYE is in a broad spectrum and a broad approach, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jenna, Jenna, who's going to help us dive even deeper into the FY program here at UNLV.
Awesome. Thanks, Brett. I could literally listen to you talk forever. You have the most engaging voice, and that's one of my dreams for life. So thanks for helping us set the stage of kind of what is FYE, what does that mean, what is the scope? Because I think for sure most of us have been at UNLV a minute, and we have a lot of acronyms that are thrown around a lot, and it can be very overwhelming. So my point of kind of the next few slides is really to help you understand some of the tools that we have put in place to help you utilize FYE within whatever space you're in. And I think one of my favorite things about how we've designed FYE at UNLV currently is it really is this beautiful merge of student affairs and academic affairs and kind of bringing it all together. So I want to share with you in the chat box something that the amazing Karen has developed that I'm going to talk about in a moment, but I want to share this because it's relevant to the slide we're on right now. And so in this slide that I'll talk about, you'll see that there's all of these different areas, these 5 areas of focus that, in my opinion, is kind of where your integration of first year experience can live. So it's not just the Common Read. Yes, that's one experience for sure. And I think the Common Read, we could argue, is a lot of things, right? Like you can explore opportunities and identity within the Common Read. It can help you personally grow. I think there's even really great stories in our current Common Read that can help students really thrive and understand what achievement and success can look like within their own life. So, but I love these 5 areas of focus because they really allow us to break down anything we're doing that encompasses within our role at UNLV into an area of the FYE. So arguably anything you do can be part of the FYE. So in this next slide is where the link that I put in the chat box might help you a little bit. So this is hyperlinked on the slide, but I put it in the chat for y'all. So this is what we're calling the FYE Connection Award. And I think this is truly one of the coolest things UNLV has ever done in the last 10 years that I have been here. So kudos to Karen on that. So what the Connection Award is it's essentially this menu of opportunities that students can engage with within first year experience. And every experience they utilize, they are eligible for a scholarship. So I'm not sure about you all, but I have found incentives really, really work with our students. If you can give them those little carrots, that usually will get them to bite eventually. And so that's exactly what this menu of experiences is. It's essentially for each experience they go to, they get an entry into a $500 scholarship. And then towards the end of the year, they award 10 of these $500 scholarships, which is pretty generous in my opinion. So I just want to share with you a couple of what is on here. I'm selfishly going to use the ones that my college helps with because those are easy for me to explain. But you'll see all sorts of cool things on this menu. So they're broken down page by page into those 5 areas we just discussed. So the first page is this connection idea, right? So you'll see mixers, you see community breakfast, you see things that really kind of get them to engage. Then the next area you'll see is explore. So this is really diving into exploring all of their options, right? So I think the involvement fair is the best example of this, where students can go, they meet all of the different student organizations, can really start to identify what might be a good fit for them. Then you have grow, which in my opinion is probably selfishly, I think the most exciting one. So the first event you'll see on that list is Surviving and Thriving, which is hosted by my college. And this is an event we put on specifically for first year students to help them start thinking about what are those gaps? What are the things that you maybe need to know, the questions you have? And we put together this really great panel of undergraduate students to answer those questions for the incoming first years, which has been a great event. It's our largest attended event, over 100 students every single semester for the last 4 years. So that certainly falls into that alignment of growing. And then if you keep going down, you'll see we have Thrive. A lot of great opportunities here. Again, selfishly, I will highlight my own event. But every spring, we do this really awesome mental health panel where we bring in professionals from the community that are mental health practitioners to talk to our students about really helping to develop their mental health capacity during college specifically, because we all know that is a very, very stressful time. So this is another opportunity that if they go to our event, they can get entered into that scholarship drawing, which is really exciting. And then the last sections is the Believe. So these are, in my opinion, probably the more fun things, most likely. These are the things that really help them to see beyond college, really to help them think what is possible with their future and how does a college degree really interact with that goal. So I believe this is an awesome tool. I use this in my class as well. So I actually have an assignment that my students have to go to at least 2 events that are listed on the FYE Connection Award menu. And I get so much positive feedback from the students, especially as you saw, there's so many different opportunities that they can utilize from that menu. So even if they are a fully remote student, there's options for them. Even if they are working 40 hours a week, there's options for them. Even if they have kiddos or they're taking care of grandparents, there's options for them. So I really love utilizing that as an assignment in my class because it just provides them a lot of options. And then it really starts to dive deeper into the overall concept of FYE. So when they start hearing about it in their classes, it's not so foreign to them. So let's move on and talk about a little bit more of how the Common Read really integrates with what Karen talked about, an HIP. So I call it a HIP because that's easier for me. So I actually have spent a lot of time over the last 10 years researching different HIPs. So specifically, I research internships and service learning, which are 2 different ways of utilizing HIPs. But the best way I can define it for you is an active learning practice that promotes deep learning by promoting student engagement. So again, earlier when I said this mix of student affairs and academic affairs merging together, that's basically a HIP. There you go. That's basically what it is. And so there's a lot of different ways you can utilize HIPs within a college education, but specifically the Common Read is a really awesome tool within first year seminars and experiences. But a lot of you potentially, maybe you've never heard of a HIP before, maybe you don't necessarily know what that is. I put the list of overall all of the things that are designated as HIPs for you to see that you're probably already engaging in some version of a HIP and you just might not know it. So I actually just had the opportunity to, we're hiring a FIR in my college of faculty and residents, and I was interviewing them and I asked them, I was like, can you tell me about some high impact practices you're using in your classroom? And I was astonished by the amount of applicants that had no idea what that was. So I'm really excited to help educate folks today about that. But as you can see, I mean, especially if you're teaching upper division coursework, you're probably doing this, but I would argue most of our first year seminars dabble in this stuff already. The first year seminar within itself is a HIP, but then most of us are already doing collaborative assignments and learning, group projects, right? Most of us are already doing some sort of course project, right? Something that starts in the beginning of the semester, goes all the way to the end. I know many of our faculty are engaging now in service learning or volunteer opportunities or community-based research. All of those are considered to be HIP. So I want to hopefully demystify that for you a little bit because I think it's a very scary term for people, but in reality, you're already doing it. So kudos to you. So hopefully this gives you a base idea of what the HIP is so that we can dive a little bit more into the Common Read and how we're utilizing that and why. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it on over to Emily.
Thank you, Jenna. It's very challenging to follow both you and Brett. I didn't think about that when we planned out the schedule of who was speaking and when. So as Jenna said, this idea of active engagement that's promoting deep learning really infuses the first year experience, especially in sort of like that national level and the practices that are being talked about. So this slide just kind of highlights some of the things that were under that umbrella before that Brett talked about that you can see. And what I really want to emphasize here, which we've been saying over and over again, is that these are all connective activities and programs, right? They're I think we've been using the words merging, we've been using the word combine, right? They're bringing things together. So all of these programs, whether it's, programming that is directed towards family and parents, whether it's bridge experiences, whether it's portfolios that students are creating in a first year seminar or first year writing class, any of these practices that are happening, in the FYE writ large are really meant to foster deep thinking about how different areas can connect together. And those different areas might be different parts of the college, the academic and the co-curricular. It might be the student themselves and all of the life experience they have and all of the hopes and dreams they have and how it connects to the college. It might be how different disciplines connect. But these are all designed to be places where that connective work can happen. So I want to delve now more into specifically the Common Read and how the Common Read works as a high impact practice and how it does this connective work. So the Common Read, I think when you look back at the AAC&U's list of high impact practices, you can see that it kind of fits into multiple categories and can be in multiple categories depending on how it's implemented. I think the strongest category it fits in is that common intellectual experience. This is really the home of the Common Read, even if it's also in the first year seminars and first year experience in general. I think in particular, the Common Read has become a really important space for this in light of general education reforms. So as colleges have kind of looked at general education and said, okay, it's great that we have this, set of common classes, but one, we've built in a lot more choice. So oftentimes students aren't really actually taking the same classes, right? They may be filling the same basic requirements, but they might not be having the same classes. And two, students have a lot of different needs. Not everyone is necessarily taking math or English, depending on what their placement scores are. Depending on what their degree is, they might have different pathways through that. So, there's a real chance that a campus Common Read program might be the only actual shared experience that every single incoming student might have, or that, everyone in the college might have. So this is really an important space to all be delving into some of the similar big questions, all delving into a particular text and discussing it. It's a really important space for that common intellectual work. So one thing I want to highlight here in terms of demystifying the Common Read is that I think oftentimes a lot of the concerns about a Common Read, national concerns that have been, brought up, but also, small concerns of an individual student, might be that everyone has to have the same experience of the book in common, that you have to agree with what the book is saying, you have to like the book. You have to be like, yes, this is going to be my new favorite book, or, something like that, right? That basically when a college is saying, here, read this book, it's also saying, agree with everything in this book, or like this book, or anything like that. That's really not the case, right? It's a common intellectual experience. And so the book is really a platform for discussion and debate and difference of opinion. And that's actually how you build community from the book, right? So you're not building community by everyone having the exact same experience of it, and you're not building an intellectual experience by everyone having the exact same experience. The book is becoming a space to have those conversations, to connect through and with the differences that we have. Right? So you begin to see, okay, here's how I connect with this book, and here's where I don't. You begin to see that your classmate who brings a whole different perspective to the book changes the way you're thinking about it. You agree to disagree over what I'm thinking of our current book, what stories that you most resonate with, or who you like or who you don't, and why. And you do that in an intellectual way, right? This is the lesson of what it means to be part of an intellectual community, that you find ways to have those disagreements and those discussions in ways that are thoughtful and well-reasoned and generous in conversation and so on. So the Common Read does really important work, I think, in bringing us together, but not in a way that erases differences, but celebrates differences and highlights how we can be a community with those. And that's one of the huge ways in which it fosters that sense of belonging, right? Because you realize that you can find belonging on campus, even if you have differences of opinions with it. So I would really emphasize the text as a starting point, but it's the discussion and it's the connection that makes it high impact and makes it this intellectual experience. So, you know, with any high impact practice, and I think Jenna could talk about this a lot too, you don't just shove it in and say, oh, I did it, and now it's high impact. Implementation really matters, right? And to make it be an effective place of communication, an effective place of connection, implementation is key. So some of the common areas across the nation where Common Reads are brought into the college experience include small group discussions and new student orientation. Sometimes those happen when the students have already read the book and then discuss them. At my previous institution, that's how we did it. They had to read it over the summer, and then orientation happened right before the semester started, and they discussed it in small groups during their orientation then. Or sometimes it happens, as we do it a little bit more, where you have small group discussions that help frame the book, so that when you're reading it, either in a first year seminar or on your own, those small group discussions have shaped how you're encountering it. Most programs are really encouraging reading in the summer as a way to prepare and get you excited for coming into the new academic year. So there might be study questions shared, there might be multiple spaces in which to discuss it. Connecting with the library is always really, really big for Common Reads. The library is often a source of context. It's often a source of additional resources. It helps model how to take an idea or take a piece of information and research further into it. Oftentimes there'll be cultural events that are related to the book or to the theme of the book. Author events are a common connection for Common Reads. Although those are expensive. And so there's been more and more talk in Common Read land about sort of how to navigate the incredible opportunity of having students read something and then get to see the people who produced what they read, but also the challenges of doing that under tight budget times. So that's, I think, a really interesting space that is continually being thought through. It is often connected to first year courses. So the first year seminars, I think, are the obvious place where Common Reads are often connected. Sometimes the students won't read it over the summer at all. They will start the Common Read in their first year seminar in the fall. Sometimes they're reading it in the summer and still discussing it in the first year seminar. But it can also come into other courses like first year writing classrooms, like our English 101 or 102. It might be embedded into other general ed courses that students are having in common. There are even programs like UPenn's program where it goes beyond the first year courses and it becomes more of a true campus read. And so there are many courses across all 4 years that are engaging with the book. And then of course, it's being tied into first year student life activities. So let's talk a little bit more about our particular program and what we've done with our inaugural year. So first of all, our goals match the goals that we know are key for a Common Read program in general. So goal number 1, providing a point of connection and shared experience for new to UNLV students. I do want to highlight that new to UNLV students because that would refer to the traditional first year student starting their first year of college here at UNLV. But also emphasizes transfer students too, or other people who are having their first experience at UNLV. For the formation of community related to academic and personal growth. Our second goal is modeling intellectual engagement in the higher educational setting, as we discussed, and then offering opportunities to engage with diverse perspectives, which I think is a goal that is important for many universities, but is particularly important for us. It's part of us really sort of living out what it means to be an MSI, which I have to shout out today, being MSI Celebration Week. And it's part of really thinking about the specifics of our community and how to continue nurturing it in ways that are respectful and thoughtful of our diverse student body. So I am going to put in the chat, Karen developed a fuller list of our goals for the Common Read. So these are kind of the quick 3 main things, but you can see more on this document that really sort of talks through what we're hoping our students are doing with this text. So we'll talk about year 1 next. So year 1, I think I can speak for everyone, it was a whirlwind. In my experience of it, it was something that there were rumbles like, hey, UNLV might have a Common Read, which was so exciting. You know, it's something that has been a national practice for a really long time because it's a high impact practice and we hadn't had one. And so it was so exciting to think about that happening. And I thought, great, 2 or 3 years from now, we'll have one. And then we had one within like 2 or 3 months. So it was really, really exciting. And we've done a lot so far. So our book, of course, is Tell Me Who You Are. Once that was selected, the planning got underway to integrate that into new student orientation. So students completed a self-reflection story activity during their summer new student orientations where they had a sort of, I want to call it a Mad Lib style, but it wasn't really Mad Libs because it was purposeful and intentional, but there was sort of a fill in the blank prompt where students sort of talked through some different sentence structures that helped them think about their identity and what made them them and how they were going to contribute to the UNLV community when they joined it. So they were being really prompted to share their story in the way the people in our book shared their stories. They were so impactful. They were wonderful. So students completed that story and they learned about the Common Read, both as part of our first year experience initiatives and as part of our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So in all of those NSO sessions from May to August, about 5,326 students touched the book, right? They got a sense of, okay, this is what we're doing. Once they had attended NSO, they received information on how they could receive their free copy of the book, which I do have to say, a free copy isn't always a guarantee at all institutions. At my previous institution, students had to buy their own copy of the book. So, you know, this is something really exciting that UNLV was able to offer, that we get free copies of the book for students. So for fall of 2022, there were 6,000 e-codes that we had purchased that we distributed to students who had attended NSO. And I believe about 5,300 then were assigned. So, you know, a lot of students were taking the code, accessing it, being able to access the book. In the midst of NSO and then students getting their own copy of the book, there were summer FYE Connecting series events and messaging and discussions in our FYE Canvas or Web Campus page. So there was theming in the summer, trying to get students hyped about the book, excited about the book, wanting to think about those big questions about who am I? How am I going to like bring myself to this community? Who are these other people and what can I learn about them? And so there were a number of different activities or discussion board questions or reminders that we're asking students to begin to engage with the text of the book itself and the themes of the book. And then at Creates, our new student convocation, as we kicked off the academic year, the Common Read authors came in and spoke. I don't know if anybody who was here was able to see them talk. It was amazing to meet them and to hear them reflect on their college experience because they had just recently graduated. So a lot of their talk was beginning to think about not only what they had done with creating this book, but also thinking about how they were thinking about the book and the other projects they had after having completed their college education and thinking back to their first year as well. So they spoke to our students and guests. We were also able to highlight some of those student self-reflections that were created in new student orientation. So a few of the students who created those reflections were then recorded and able to share their story that way. So I think that was one of the most powerful and meaningful parts of Creates this year. And then there was a small faculty and staff book signing afterwards, which was really neat. And it was awesome to see faculty and staff discussing with the authors how much just the reading experience of the book mattered to them, let alone like not even yet engaging the students with it, but just, you know, reading it themselves and thinking through the ideas of the book. Then there were a couple different touch points throughout the semester, different activities. One of the biggest places, though, where students were continuing to engage with the book were in select first-year seminar sections. I think the next Professor Circle will really be the space where we'll get to delve into this more. There was a wide range of how first-year seminars used the book, from just a brief mention and discussion maybe in the first week of class, to reading a few of the stories in depth, to reading big chunks of the book in depth. So there were a lot of different ways of engagement in the first year seminar. So overall, it was a pretty exciting launch to Common Read at UNLV. But our work is never done. A new year is coming up. So there are some pretty exciting things for next year and the future of the Common Read at UNLV. The first thing is that Karen's team has decided on having a 2-year cycle for book selections. This is increasingly a practice in Common Read programs across the nation because people are realizing it is a ton of work to do the curriculum development, to do the advertising and marketing, to get buy-in for a particular text, and just to get people excited about a book. And to do that amount of work every single year is extensive, right? It might not be the best use of resources. And you don't get to necessarily take what you learn from the first year and keep building on it. So with a 2-year cycle, we get to really sit with the book a little bit more. We get to have those deeper conversations with the book, and we get to really grow what we do with the book. So that is really exciting. That means we are going to keep Tell Me Who You Are for the 2023-2024 academic year. But because we've learned lessons from year one, we're going to change a couple things along the way. So one of the things is, instead of those ebook codes, we're going to switch to having a wider amount of hard copies of the book. There'll still be some ebook codes because we do have some entirely virtual students who we want to have included in this process. But actually handing students the hard copy of the book, I think, is going to make a big difference in how much they're really connecting with it. You know, there's more sensory knowledge of the book. They're going to be able to carry that with them into their different classes, to see other people carrying the book. And so I think that's going to be a new element that we're going to get to, as Brett was saying yesterday, do a little test of the e-codes versus the hard copy and see which we would want to continue pursuing for future years. We're going to continue aligning the Common Read experience with new student orientation, with the first year experience office and the messaging that they put out via Web Campus and social media and their Summer Connect series. It will still connect with Creates, although we are not bringing back the authors again, but we're going to find some new cool ways to make some connections to the Common Read in Creates. We're going to continue having this be part of parent and family programming as well, so that, again, this connective experience, parents and families are part of this too, because they are part of our community as well. But we have some new initiatives this year that this book is also going to be connecting with. So Rebel Ready Week is going to be at the heart of some of what happens with the Common Read this year. That is when students will be getting their copies of the book. There's going to be sessions related to that. So in that full week, they're going to get a real foundation and a deeper understanding of what the Common Read is, why we are doing it, and how they can use it to build their connection with the community and strengthen the sort of intellectual skills that we're hoping that they'll continue to grow and build during their time at UNLV. We're going to continue also having that connection to the first year seminars. And again, I think this is something that's going to come up in April. But we're really excited to continue sharing what worked really well this past year in the first year seminars, to share some new ideas with one another, to make sure that it's really integrating into those courses effectively. So very excited for year 2 with this book. And then, you know, the forthcoming years at UNLV as we grow the Common Read program.
All right. Well, that was basically kind of our picture, our look at not only why this is so important, but what this has, and then the possibility of what it will look like in the future. As Emily mentioned, the next Professor Circle, we're going to dive a little bit more into how it was utilized in the classroom. But we want to finish this time, but just having you all ask any questions. If someone wants to look in the chat box, I'm sharing my screen so someone else can monitor that. Maybe that'd be great. So you can ask questions by unmuting yourself. You can ask those in the chat box. And then Karen, Jenna, Emily, and myself would be happy to, you know, just kind of facilitate that conversation as you go. So is there any questions? You can, again, either chat them or unmute yourself and ask.
Well, I'll unmute myself and ask. I'm Barbara Sanders from the Office of Equal Employment in Title IX. And this is my out of retirement job. And prior to that, I was a dean. So I'm really familiar with the whole academic process and the students' support process. But I will tell you, as I've watched these presentations, I kept saying, what a difference this would have made in my college life when I was a freshman. You know, I was one of the smartest kids in our school. And then I go to school with a whole bunch of people who are the smartest kids at their school. And then the awkward stage of how do you meet people? What do you do? And then how do you learn all the ropes? And I think something like this provides that kind of foundation that at least lets you know at least one person on campus that's important who can help you. Because other than that, you're lost. And I noticed even with Infinity groups, those were open to certain sets of folks, but not all the folks who might have fit within there. So please tell me, I missed the first few minutes. How do students get involved in this first year experience? How are they selected? How do they find out about it?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. Hi.
Okay.
Yeah, it's if you are a new student at UNLV, and I think Emily mentioned this, our umbrella includes all new first year students. So that includes traditional first year students and first time in college, and also our new transfers who join us in the community. So anybody in their first year. So we so that is who we reached out to from the very second that they begin their life cycle with UNLV. So we're working really closely throughout that life cycle with admissions, through the onboarding processes, placement processes with English and math, first year seminar, the peer mentoring program, new student orientation. We are working in partnership. So students don't have to join anything. We basically are, I like to think of us as a shadow, and that's what we tell students, like we are walking alongside you from start to finish. So you will see us, you will hear from us, you will see us on social media, you will get messages from us. We will add you to the FYE Web Campus shell. Everywhere that we can pull students into that structure that we've created, we do that. So they know that our presence is there to support them, their families, their parents, their support networks, and that we're, like I said, really their home base and their first stop as they move through that not only the onboarding life cycle, but once they start that academic year, all the way through the first year experience and then into the second year experience. So there's really nothing they need to do. We very proactively make ourselves kind of known and present, so they hopefully are aware that we are there when they need us and are ready to engage. So I hope that helps.
It does. And I would vote for the book. I'm in love with books. I've got a house full of books. I grew up in a house full of books. My children who have families now have houses full of books. Mm-hmm. And that book is something, when you talk about the tactile, the sensory bit of the book, and the book also, you can go back and pick it up and you don't have to have electricity. and you don't have to have a Wi-Fi connection, and you don't have to have a computer. You can just have a book, and you can mark it up, and your marks will be there, and you can write the end. I mean, it is, my daughter and her family are visiting, and I was telling grad school stories of studying at 2 a.m. in the stacks with her and her little baby thing next to me. And, you know, I know that the stacks aren't the same, there's nothing there, but just touching those books and seeing where the next book led. So I would vote for books.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it'd be like your little badge. Ooh, you belong to the same club. You've got the same book. I think this is amazing, excited. And I wish you all the luck in the world with it. This is really great for students. Really great. And it's
thank you, Barbara, for sharing that.
It is. I mean, students need, I did not know how much help I needed until well after I was out of college and started working at a university and realizing that we talk in a language that no one understands. One of my favorite stories is working with a VP. I have a clinical background. That's my master's level stuff. And he kept talking about the PDR. And I'm looking at how does I'm an academic dean. And I said, what does the PDR have to do with this? And I'm sitting in a room with a whole bunch of other deans. And everybody's acting like they knew what was going on. So I just figured I was stupid. Must have fell asleep at some point, which would not have been hard. So I said, would you please explain to me how the PDR fits? And he looks at me like, what, you stupid? I'm, oh, great, that's all. I said, tell me how the physician's desk reference works. He said, what's that? I said, the PDR. He said, oh no, I made up a new title for this process. It's called Program and Discipline Review. And you know what? I was the only one who knew what it meant. Everybody else was just sitting up there nodding, going, I'm not gonna be embarrassed. Well, it was hard to embarrass me. I could do it myself much easier. But just as we talk in alphabet soup, and we are not communicating with each other, this is such a good way to cut through all that stuff and help students. It's where you become another form of their GPS. You're one of the buttons. So this is great. I'm so glad I had a chance to find the link and get here.
Well, thank you, Barbara. I loved hearing your perspective. That's so wonderful. I see in the chat box, Cassandra asked a question. She said, and, you know, Karen, I'd love you to speak to this too, because we just had this conversation yesterday. She asked, is there a committee with faculty that helps select the Common Read book in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And we, like Brett said, literally we're just having this conversation yesterday. As we move forward to the next 2-year cycle, it'll be probably about this time next year, if not sooner, maybe towards the end of fall semester. We will be looking to form a selection committee. That's the practice at most universities nationwide, to make that selection and work with the faculty and the campus partners to make that selection for the university. So that is the plan for next year, is to form a selection committee with the faculty and staff on campus. So we're excited and looking forward to that process. So stay tuned. We'll absolutely have more information on that once we head into fall. But I would expect it probably towards the end of fall, because it definitely takes some time. Typically, at least in committees I've been involved with at other institutions, there's a process of obviously nominating different selections, talking with faculty and staff on campus, and having a group, you know, review selections, read selections, discuss selections, you know, what will be the best, obviously, choice for the outcomes of the high impact practice that we're and the goals we're trying to achieve. So very excited about that. If you have interest, please stay connected with us. Reach out to me anytime. I'm always happy to talk more about it.
Great, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Cassandra.
Yeah, that was great. Any other questions? You can unmute yourself, like I said.
Yes, I just have a quick question. I know in your presentation you had mentioned something about the second year experience, and since this is the second 2-year use of this Common Read that we're doing, have there been has the messaging gone out for that for the second year, or for our first years who are going to be transferring to second year, as far as how we're going to be engaging next year, or we're waiting till the semester starts? Because I saw the wonderful stuff that you guys have shared on the attachments, and I was just wondering how we are looking at carrying that conversation over.
That's a great question, Anna. So you're talking about students who already had it in their first year, and if they'll be engaging in the second year experience still with the Common Read. Is that your question?
Yes, because we're using the Common Read for this coming year as well.
Yeah, that's honestly not a conversation that we have had yet, because we've been focusing on our incoming students for the coming year. And this first year, obviously, we were moving students through, obviously, this inaugural year, fall and spring semester, but that's a great question. So thank you for raising that. We have a very small kind of planning group right now that's kind of working on year two, and I'm going to add that to our discussion for our next meeting, because I think that is an incredible idea, and there are structures in place in the second year that I think would lend themselves really nicely to those conversations continuing. So thank you. And I know I'm going to see you later, so I'm actually going to talk with you later about this if I see you. Thank you for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm.
I'll throw in that I think that, when we recruit for student leadership positions, like peer mentors and orientation leaders, them having that knowledge of the book already from their first year is one kind of obvious place I can see a connection.
Yes. That's why I was asking, because what you have built just looks so seamless already with the foundation that you have, that I was like, how do we get them connected with our peer mentors and everything like that? I was like, all of my little synapses were popping. So I'm sorry.
That's awesome. No, I love those ideas. And I think it also just shows like the incredible untapped potential that this has, because I think, especially as you said, as the SYE kind of continues to grow and develop at UNLV, I think there's going to be more and more of those connections that just naturally grow from the FYE. So thank you. I'm excited now to start thinking about this too.
Awesome. Anybody else? Either in the chat box, raise your hand, unmute yourself. All right. Well, obviously you have, I'm sure you can get all of our information from either Karen, from the intersection today, towards just knowing us at UNLV. So always feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions, as you start processing things about how we can implement, even take this tool to the next level, we'd love to hear from you. And again, Karen, do you want to wrap up and talk about what's coming up next?
Yeah, thanks so much, Brett. As we shared, we will be back for the next Intersection Professor Circle coming up in April. So we're excited to come back. So thank you again to the Intersection for giving us this space to talk about the Common Read and some of the exciting things that are happening in first year experience. So at our next Professor Circle, which is April 5th at 10 o'clock again, we're actually going to have some faculty coming in who used the Common Read in the fall 22 semester and are currently using it in the spring 2023 semester, to really kind of dig in a little bit deeper on how they did that. As you heard today, there are 1,000,001 different ways that you can incorporate it into an academic setting in terms of curricular integration. So we'll have 3 faculty members that will join us in April to kind of talk about what they did, what they're doing, and what they hope to do in the coming year. So hope you can all join us.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you all so much for coming and doing this wonderful presentation. We really appreciate it, and can't wait until April for the next Professor Circle. And I would be remiss if I didn't always say, please make sure if there's anything that we can do here in the intersection to help promote this. I'm talking about utilization of the Common Read and your programs. Please let us know. It's hard for me to say no, because we always want to make sure that our students are successful. So thank you all so very, very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.